Hi there. Welcome to a new episode of Branding with Friends, the show where branding meets key small business and service business topics. Here you're going to learn tips straight from the experts on everything from SEO to authentic marketing to book writing and how to manage your social media. We focus on what you can do right now to use these topics and the power of branding to attract your ideal clients. I'm your host, branding expert Annie Franceschi of Greatest Story Creative. I help service business owners tell their story and show their value through clear messaging and consistent branding. I'm also a former Disney storyteller, professional speaker, and the author of the best-selling book, Permission to Try. And today I am so excited to introduce you to yet another friend of mine in the business world. If you have been wondering about pricing, how can you charge what you're worth? How can you charge what you're worth? How can you price yourself strategically so you can actually grow your practice as a coach or a consultant? You are going to love today's guest and today's episode. My guest today is, of course, the incredible Natalie Coombe. Natalie empowers women entrepreneurs running client-serving businesses to nail their pricing so they can pay themselves what they're worth, only working the hours they want. That sounds great. I know we all want to do that. For over 20 years, Natalie has delivered results from everyone from solopreneurs through to the top international companies in London and Europe, including MNC, Saatchi, Lita, and Mindshare worldwide, as well as working on brands such as Unilever, Dyson, American Express, and Nike. I think we've heard of a few of those. As a single mom by choice, running her own online business, Natalie understands firsthand the challenges women face when setting up and scaling their businesses. Today, Natalie works one-to-one and runs an online program, How to Nail Your Pricing, where she teaches business owners how to pay themselves what they're worth, doing what they love, only working the hours they want. Oh my gosh, you are so awesome. And I should also mention you're based in New Zealand. So welcome New Zealand to the show. Welcome, Natalie. I'm so glad you're here.
Look, it's so exciting to be here. I love what you do. And yeah, it's awesome to be here and talk about such an important topic that is really connected with branding in ways that I don't think people fully understand, but it's great to be here. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'm really glad to have this here. It's not necessarily a topic you might expect for Branding with Friends, but as you said, it is a perfect marriage. Branding and pricing really do go hand in hand. And I know you're going to illustrate that with your amazing 3 tips today. If this is your first episode of Branding with Friends, I'll remind you that we have 3 tips from Natalie today. So we're going to go through the first 2. Then Natalie's got a special gift for you. And then at the very end, we'll hold that 3rd tip. So make sure to listen all the way to the episode to get the most value from the valuable Natalie, who's here with us. Natalie, tell us, how did you settle on pricing? How did this become your sort of core expertise?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I've been doing business transformation, which is just a fancy word for troubleshooting, for over 20 years. And predominantly working with, small businesses and large corporates. And what I found was whenever there's a problem in a business, whether it's the clients aren't happy, the staff aren't happy, they're not able to do what they want, people are burning out, whatever the problem is, generally, generally it comes back to pricing. That there's not enough money in the business to be able to invest in all the things you need to run it smoothly. And so when I became a single mum by choice, when I was in London and came back to New Zealand to raise my daughter with my family. And when I went to, let's go back and earn some money, and thought of putting her in daycare 10 hours a day to work back in the corporate field when I need a different solution. So I decided to teach people what I spent 20 years learning and teach other business owners how to set up pricing so their business is profitable. And really, it was like, if I can help you solve your pricing so your business is making money, then you're able to do everything else.
Right. It's like this huge key that like unlocks everything.
100%.
Yes.
Once you've got your pricing right, like you can afford to work with experts like yourself. You can afford to pay for VAs. You can afford to do training. You can afford to do marketing. You can afford to do all of the things that grows your business and actually still be paying yourself at the same time. So once you've got the pricing kind of piece in place, it really unlocks everything else. So for me, it was like, there's one thing I can help, particularly women entrepreneurs do, because we have our own set of challenges, and that is to actually be able to have a profitable business that can pay themselves every month and they're not having to work stupid hours in order to do so.
Yeah.
That is the best gift I can give people.
I love that gift. And I think that's such a great passion, a great reason, the why behind your business. I love it. And so I think that's a perfect lead into, our first tip today. So what's the first thing you want to tell us as fellow coaches, consultants, and service business owners about pricing?
So what I've found, I've been doing this for a while now, working with hundreds of different women in business, predominantly in service, lots of coaches, lots of consultants. And there is this one misbelief, this one myth that they must all have when it comes to running their business. And that's this idea that their salary is a reward for doing a good job. Right? And you hear it all the time with people saying, oh, I waited 5 years before I paid myself, kind of like it's a badge of honor that you waited so long before you paid yourself. And we have this idea that eventually, at some point, if you've worked hard enough, if you're successful enough, and you've done it for long enough, eventually you'll be able to pay yourself a salary. But the truth is that your salary is not a reward for doing a good job. It is a fixed business cost that you have to plan for. Because if you don't plan to make your salary in your business, you simply won't. And I think particularly for what we call sole traders, so kind of solopreneurs, where you are predominantly the face and the doer of your business, your salary is going to be 2 to 3 times more than your running costs. So if you're only making a plan to generate enough revenue to cover your running costs and a little bit extra, you can't bridge that gap. No matter working harder, getting more clients, doing more work is going to bridge the 2 to 3 times
the ratio. Yeah.
In order to consistently be able to pay yourself what you're worth every single month. So you need to incorporate your salary into your pricing so that when you're making your goals and you're doing all the actions to generate the revenue, that revenue actually generates you salary, not just your bills.
Yeah. And I think that that's so important, and to be aware of that at every stage, because, a big part of being in business is to pay yourself, is to, you wouldn't go work for someone else without getting paid. You are your best boss, right? So I think keeping that in mind and building a sustainable business, because also it's not useful if you spend all your money to, on marketing and then make nothing from it. What's that to show, right? There's a time to invest, and there's also a time to pay yourself, and they have to coexist if you're going to have a successful business, a business that won't burn you out.
Right? Well, and that's right. And I think particularly for women, a lot of them are moms, not everyone, not all my clients are, but a lot are. Mm-hmm. And more kind of mothers are moving towards running their own businesses. So if you don't pay yourself enough, what's going to happen is you work more hours, you work the evenings, you work the weekends, just to try and get enough money to justify what you're doing. And then that affects your relationships with your kids, that affects relationships with partners, that affects your mental health, that affects your physical health. And so pricing is intrinsically linked to all of that. My goal is always to get clients to be able to generate enough money to pay themselves a decent salary, only working the hours they have available, which is usually school hours.
Yeah.
Right. And so it requires a different math than kind of we would traditionally go into, which is just work harder, just work more hours.
Right. And many of us hate math. Like, we know that. We know many of us hate math, don't know our numbers. But if you've, watched Branding with Friends, we've had multiple experts on to talk about how important the numbers are. I know Natalie's just one of many. I'm going to always tell you that too. When you pay attention to the numbers, you see where your time is, not just the money you're making, but where your time goes, especially if you're the soul traders. I love that term. I never heard that before. If you're somebody like that, like me, like, you have to be really mindful of where your time goes and what is a wise investment of your time and what is not such a wise investment. But I love that myth of that, like, it's this reward and that we should delay it. Because one of the things I love about my business is that it supports myself and my family. Like, that's a beautiful gift, but I know not everyone can say that. But sometimes not everyone can say that because they don't realize that it's a psychological mindset, which I love is your world. So on that note, I know you brought this other great tip, and I'm really excited to hear about it. So what is, if we kind of myth bust that first piece, what is the second thing we need to keep in mind?
So The second thing is a lot of people don't know there's actually tried and tested methods for figuring out what you need to be charging. So when I talk to people, I'm like, right, how do you currently price? Most of them are kind of finger in the air, I guess. I'm guessing, what number feels right. And my favorite, what I think the client can afford. So those are kind of really the most common, which makes sense when no one teaches you another way. We work with what we've got, but there are actually 4 kind of key pricing methods specifically for service-based for service-based businesses. And I'm going to do a real quick whistle stop. I've got an article I can share later if you want to go into more detail. But a kind of a quick whistle stop with those so that they exist, and you can kind of find which one you think is going to work best for you. So super quick, they are market-based pricing, number 1, goal-based pricing is number 2, cost-based pricing is number 3, and value-based pricing is number 4. Each one of those is more powerful than the last. Most people start and stop on market-based pricing, which you can probably guess from the name what that is. That's where we look at our competitors. We go, am I more or less experienced than them? Can I charge more or less?
Yes.
Right. So we base it on market rate. The problem with market rate and market-based pricing is that you have no idea if your competitors are making any money.
Yes. Amen, sister. You don't know just because they look.
Money.
If they could be making $500,000 and spending $499,000 on their marketing. You don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. They're probably sitting there going, I wish I could charge more, but I can't charge more because my competitors aren't charging more. So they would go, I'd lose my clients. So they're also sitting there going, this is not really working for me, but I'm feeling trapped within this kind of market cap.
Right.
The other thing is, even if they are making some money, their business is a black box to us. Like, we don't know they've got going on behind closed doors. They may have invested heavily in automating systems. That means that they've streamlined their processes so they can deliver more for less.
Right.
They may use really cheap resources offshore that you might not want to be using in order to be able to deliver it. They may be prepared to work 50 hours a week in order to make a salary, and you've only got 20. So basing your pricing on their pricing and hoping that it's going to work for you is a really unreliable, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I love the black box analogy. I think that's a really good point. You don't know with many people kind of what their situation, what their story is, or even if you think their pricing is even accurate, right? So I think those are all really great. Not that it's clearly important. You clearly want to understand it, but I'm curious. Tell me about the other 3. Tell me about the other 3 for sure.
Yeah. So one thing before we move on from market-based, what it's used, it's not very good as a pricing method, but it's really good for context. And this is particularly where branding comes in, because once you've done the math and used ideally one of the other methods to work out what you personally need to be charging so your business works for you, that helps you. Market-based pricing helps you figure out where you are in context. Are you cheap and cheerful, which means it's a volume equation, which is a different kind of advertising marketing mechanic? Are you middle of the road with your pricing, in which case, how do you stand out in a crowded marketplace? That's where everyone kind of lives. Or do you need to position yourself at the premium end of the pricing scale? That's going to particularly affect how you need to position yourself in the market, your branding, your tone of voice, who you go after. So market-based pricing, unreliable as a pricing method, but really good for context.
Well, and I think context is the name of the game, and why you may be listening or watching to Branding with Friends today. Something I don't think a lot of my clients realize, or folks that are thinking about branding can help you charge more for what you do.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you look the part and you sound the part, people are going to justify paying a higher price because you're going to look like an expert. I think you sort of laid out the cheap and cheerful versus the middle of the road versus the premium option. That can help you sort of, if you're going to, anchor yourself at a certain place, you need to look the part. And if you are, I think we all know that you are a valuable person. If you're watching this, I'm sure you're great at what you do. But the question to be asking is, how you're branding yourself and how you're marketing yourself and what your marketing and your website look like. Are they clear? Are they consistent? Do they convey that you are a valuable expert? Because even if you
100%.
are, but you're not putting that story out there, that's where you're going to get, we all worry about the price shock and stuff, but the more you look like, the premium expert, the more you can charge like one too, because it's not going to be a sticker shock. And I think that's a great example with the market-based piece.
Yeah. And I think, if you're going to buy a toaster, like something you don't, like it's kind of important, but in the whole scheme of things, if you have to replace it next year or whatever, like you're going to go to the cheapest place to buy a toaster. Like here we would go to Kmart, and you guys have Kmart over there. Walmart, where we used to, right?
Yeah.
Walmart,
Target,
wherever.
I think Target.
Costco, you
Costco.
go to the cheapest place to get the cheapest thing. When you're talking about something that's going to change your business and change your life, something that is really important to you, and I think pretty much all of the people listening to this will fall under that category. The work you do will change people's businesses or will change their lives. We don't want the cheapest version that might break down. We want to invest in something that we can trust is going to actually help us achieve our goals.
Yeah.
At that point, pricing becomes how we perceive how good someone is actually based on their pricing. If they become cheap, we go, well, they can't be that good.
They can't be good. Yes.
They can't be that good. But you don't, and there's a science, there's an art towards pricing, which we'll talk a bit about. But yeah, sometimes people go, if I put my price up, then I would scare people off. And you're like, well, actually, as long as your results are in line with what you're charging, clients are getting value for money, always super important, then actually there is a perceived value in a higher price point than there is in a low one. Anyway, I'm getting off topic.
I love it, but yes, so we've got these, what are the three other?
All right, so there's three others. So the second one is what I call goal-based pricing. And this is where you really work out kind of a ballpark of where you need to position yourself in order to be able to pay all your bills and pay yourself a salary kind of over the next year. And it's where you kind of work out from where you want to get to, and you just kind of work out the average that you need to be earning per client. So it's really good for if you just kind of want to do a quick sense check of where you need to be positioning, or if you are just starting out and you want to go, I really want this business to make money. Where do I need to position myself so you can kind of start on the right track? Or if you have a really simple business model. What goal-based pricing isn't so helpful for is if you have multiple services, or if you have a value ladder with your offers, or if you outsource and you get contractors to do part of it, or if you have multiple different services.
There's all these different, variables.
Yeah,
right?
Because you get an average. Goal-based is just one number. And most of us go, well, that's nice, but I have 3 offers. Like, how do I divide that one number by 3 different offers?
Which you can do, which you still can do.
You can do, yeah, you can do. But that's where the second two, and the last two, cost-based and value-based, are the most powerful of the pricing methods. These are the 2 that I recommend people use. They're the 2 that I teach. And cost-based pricing is where you work out exactly based on how you deliver all the activities, how you want to work, how you want to run your business, what kind of lifestyle you want to have. And we work out the minimum you need to be charging for your services to pay your bills, pay yourself, only working the hours that you want. Because once you know the minimum, it goes, okay, I can charge more. I could choose to charge less, but I know the minimum that works for me. And so for us women who we tend to always downplay our value, it's so empowering once you know it's not worth me doing it for less.
Yes.
It helps you maintain your boundaries. When you haven't done the math and you don't understand the impact of charging less has on your bank balance, on how many hours you have to work, all of that stuff, of course you're going to, reduce it to get the sale because it's easier and it doesn't feel so icky. So understanding the minimum is really important for creating a business that's viable, right? That you can keep going on, and you're able to make investments in your business to get, the VA and to get the branding expert help and to get all that really cool stuff. But it also empowers you to stick to your guns with what your pricing, the minimum your pricing needs to be. So So that's really powerful. And then I recommend people partner that with value-based pricing. So value-based pricing is my favorite one. And it's the most powerful because value-based pricing it's not about how long it took you to deliver it, how many hours you spent, how much it cost you, or even how much you're worth, because we all suck at that. But it's about the change you help your clients to achieve and how valuable that is to them. So value-based pricing is where it's no longer about you or how much you're worth or how good you think.
That's got to feel like freedom to some people. I know they're like, I don't know what I'm worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's no longer about us. It's about our clients. What do we enable them to achieve or experience that they couldn't do before? How much is that worth to them? And so value-based pricing, like it unlocks your profitability because you're no longer tied to how many hours a day or how many hours a week you can work, because it's not about that. It's about the value. But it also makes pricing conversations a whole lot less awkward and uncomfortable because you're not saying, I'm worth a lot of money. You're just saying, this is what you'll be able to achieve afterwards. This is how valuable it is to you. So
this is what the solution is. If this is your problem, here is the valuable solution.
Correct.
Here's how it's going to solve your big problem.
Yes. Yeah. And this is what you, dear client, will be able to achieve or feel or do or experience afterwards. And so as long as the client is getting value for money,
right,
then it's a no-brainer.
Right.
And once you know those two numbers, you know the minimum you need to charge, which is cost-based, and you know the maximum you can charge for the client's no longer getting value for money, which is value-based, you can charge whatever you like, whatever you feel comfortable, whatever you feel confident charging between those two. A lot of my clients go on a journey from charging the minimum to slowly, as their confidence grows, increasing their pricing to charging the max. And quite a few of my clients go from not charging the minimum to just getting a point where every month they're paying themselves a decent salary. They're no longer working the weekends, working the evenings, and they're just like, this is amazing. And once they've got to that place, then they start growing.
I love it. I love it. This is so much permission, and I'm big on permission. I wrote a whole book called Permission to Try, which is all about giving yourself permission to do crazy things like price yourself well. But I think you did a great job of explaining sort of these 4 different modes of pricing and how they work together. And I think, you know, I have found in my experience, you know, when I first started out, I think we just have all these like mindsets we bring in from how we were raised around money and worth and jobs. And you think, well, I just need to be affordable. And what I adopted many years ago is I realized I wasn't striving to be affordable so much as I was striving to be valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like a huge difference, like a huge shift of how you present yourself and what you offer. And you can always support people. You know, a lot of the pushback I get with pricing, and maybe you hear this too, not on my personal pricing, but just about, oh, I shouldn't raise my prices. Well, but I want to help as many people as possible. Sure. And there's so many wonderful ways, including like sliding scale pricing to do that, to give out a certain number of projects a year pro bono, to offer free resources or lower cost trainings. There's all these wonderful ways to do that. So that's, I think you're here because we, especially the women that are listening, need to hear this message, which is it's okay. And also it's really necessary to price yourself well. Yeah. For you to have a great business. So I know that folks are going to want to talk to you after this and connect with you. And I think you brought something along to Branding with Friends. So what is it that folks can get if they want to learn a little bit more about you, Natalie?
Yeah, so I have a tool, kind of a free tool that I think a lot of people find really helpful. It's kind of, I call it five steps to double your salary, because people have doubled their salary doing these steps. And it's a way of helping you uncover areas in your services that you can actually make little quick wins, little changes that will significantly increase how much profit, how much money you make for every job that you do. So it's really easy to use, and it starts you on that journey for understanding how much you're currently making, and where you can start to improve to start to make more money for every job that you do. So it's a really important kind of first step in that journey. So yeah, I think you have the link for it. So I hope people will download that and then start that journey to start paying themselves what they're worth.
Well, I'd love to hear any stories of folks who do that, and I will definitely check it out. But it sounds like an awesome resource. So thank you for sharing that with us. And whether you're listening or watching Braiding with Friends, it's going to be here in the notes for you to check that out with Natalie and, of course, connect with her. Of course, we do have one more tip, which I believe is like 3 tips in one. So, I'm so glad you're here. What we sort of talked all the way through this. So we talked about releasing ourselves from the myth. Right. The big myth that, not paying yourself is a badge of honor, screw that. We've decided that.
Yeah.
Now we know the 4 different types of pricing. And I think I'm going to try, this is my quiz. Okay. So we've got market-based pricing. We've got goals-based pricing, but those are not as exciting or as useful as what you teach. They're helpful for positioning, which we've talked about with branding today, and how you want to present yourself as an expert, especially that market-based piece,
Yeah.
kind of where you need to be visually and from a messaging point. But then we've got this awesome cost-based pricing and value-based pricing that takes into account your expenses and what the value of your transformation is and marries them together so that you can be priced in a confident way that your time will be very much valued when you work with clients. Is that
100%.
good?
Nailed it.
So what's next? What's the last thing we want to leave Branding with Friends folks with? What is that last thing we want to keep in mind?
Wow. I want to give you guys 3 steps you can take to start you on your journey to value-based pricing, right? Because I know for a lot of women, anything we do easily that comes naturally, we think isn't that valuable. I don't know why we think that, but we do. And so this is a way of trying to make that shift in your own mindset to understand how valuable what you do is. So 3 steps to know your value. So number 1, I want you to think about who your ideal client is. And no doubt you guys have talked about ideal client avatars. My one is the people you enjoy working with. No point building a business with people you don't enjoy working with. So people enjoy working with, people who you get the best results with, and then those who are in a position to value what you do enough to pay you what you're worth, right? So have a think about, yes, have a think about who that ideal client is for each of your services. Step number 1. Step number 2, I want you to write down what your client is able to achieve after working with you. So not what you do, not what your process is or what they get, but what they will be able to do, feel, achieve after they've finished working with you, right? That's step number 2. And then step number 3, I want you to start thinking about not you, but those results, like what they will be able to do, and actually start thinking about how valuable that is to your client. And so generally value falls into 2 categories. For those that work with businesses, so kind of B2B, then it's quite possible you're going to help them either make more money, sell more products, save time, save cost, reduce stress, or add expertise, right? It's going to be somewhere in there, and you're usually able to, with a bit of creative thinking, tie that back to a value, like a dollar figure, right? So that's kind of the exercise. And with my clients, we go through a lot of all of this process.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is the whistle stop version. But then I know a lot of people out there listening to this will be in what we call kind of the passion industries, the helping industries, social change, working with individuals and consumers. So it's harder to say, oh, I help you make more money. You might help them with how they feel about their body or with their relationships, or anything along those lines. So in those types of industries, what's super helpful is think about other areas in their life that your clients spend money on.
Yes.
I can guarantee you every single one of your potential clients is spending way more money than the cost of your service on something else.
I love that. You're so right. And I was talking with a friend and she said, Annie, are you kidding? Like, I'm spending $500 to have an interior decorator come to my house once a month. Why are you stressing about this? And it's like,
yes.
When you start to hear how, I think that's such an eye-opening point. I'm so glad you included it.
Yeah. And people pay thousands for iPhones every year, every time they come out. What do they pay for their cars, their couches, their clothes, their holidays? There is always more things in life that people will invest their money on because people pay for what they value.
Yes.
Right? Your
Preach.
job as a CEO of your business is to understand your value and communicate it so your potential clients understand that it is worth the investment.
Amen. So good. I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm like, yes, all the things.
Yeah, all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that process of starting to really understand your value is super important, because if we don't understand it and believe it ourselves,
Yes.
that much harder for our clients to.
And I think that that's a challenge. And I know that that's something that when I work with clients through the branding process, it's a lot of capturing a value and it's a lot of giving yourself credit. And I think that that's a lot of what both pricing and branding come down to, is being at an inflection point in your business where you're stuck, you need to make more money, you need to position yourself as the expert, but you can't do that without help, like a Natalie or an Annie. Like, how is that? What is the thing that, whether it's pricing, branding, or both, how is it that you can move forward until you capture that value, right? And sometimes we plateau. I know I get there, and I've started to adapt this psychology of I need to invest and hire experts on areas where I get stuck, because that's the only way I'm gonna get unstuck. But Natalie shared some amazing, very valuable tips today. And the three I wrote down were your ideal clients. Yes, that comes up in almost every episode of Branding with Annie, but I love how you talked about it. It's exactly how I talk about it, which is I don't actually really talk about avatars or creating people. I talk about who's been your favorite people to work with that were easy yeses, that love what you did. You gave great results to, you do have to sort of start at a funnel, work with lots of different people to figure that out, but that's okay. The ideal clients, you want to focus on sort of what do they achieve through the process of working with you and what are those results worth. So I love that. I think it couldn't marry better with branding. So, if you've uncovered or been started, this has gotten you thinking about what are all these questions around pricing. Natalie is your girl to talk about this. And if it's gotten you thinking, I know I'm valuable, but how I'm talking about myself and how my website looks is not communicating that, I'm happy to talk with you. So Natalie's contact information is going to be here. I, as always, have a link on my website. It's a big red button, says free consultation. You can actually have a private chat with me right after you finish watching this episode. So hop on our calendars if you want to talk to either of us. We'll be glad to have a conversation with you. But Natalie, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your incredible pricing wisdom with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always great talking with people like yourself who just totally get it. And are passionate about helping particularly other women in business just be as successful as they want to be. So this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad you were here, and I hope you enjoyed yet another episode of Branding with Friends. So many thanks to my special guest, Natalie Coombe of New Zealand and the world at large. Tune in next time when we're going to tackle yet another topic in the business world where branding interacts with this amazing world. So till then, I'm Annie Franceschi of Greatest Story Creative. You can find all our episodes, branding resources, and a link to hop on my calendar if you want to chat at my website, greateststorycreative.com. Stay awesome, and here's to your next chapter.